Welcome to the Authority File, the podcast where you'll hear conversations with academic librarians, technologists, researchers, and authors whose work is laying the foundation for higher education's future. I'm Bill Mickey, your host and the editorial director at Choice. In this four-part series, which is brought to you with support from Gale, I'm excited to be joined by Barbie Kaiser, president of Barbie E. Kaiser, Inc. Barbie is an information resources management consultant and a longtime industry watcher, and for more than 30 years, she's helped library leaders maximize the latest developments in information products and services. Barbie joins us to discuss the latest developments in scholarly communications. There are a variety of market forces that are keeping the field in a state of perpetual change. New tech and new policies are affecting every stage of the scholarly communications lifecycle, from the very beginnings of a research project all the way through to its publication and use by others. In this third episode of our series, we dig into how the evolution of scholarly communications has opened up new opportunities for libraries, including how policies and roles are being reorganized for better integration into the ScholComm workflow. We also look at how impact measurement and research assessment are shifting. Okay, so I want to, bring this back to the library a little bit.
My favorite place.
Yep. And so how would you define the quote sort of new territory opportunities libraries can and should be taking advantage of? I mean, you've already mentioned AI, and I imagine that's going to be a big part of this too, but as opposed to the more traditional roles.
For every library and every librarian, or I should probably say for each library, it's different.
Different, right?
I think, again, a strategic approach is necessary. And I will turn back to competitive intelligence for guidance. So you may be familiar with the SWOT analysis for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Mm-hmm.
We do TOES analyses. So we turn it on its head and we say, how can we match the strengths with the opportunities, and how do we remedy the weaknesses to counteract the threats?
Mm-hmm.
So we have a plan of action, because that's where I think libraries get stuck, where we've got a report and we've got a SWOT analysis and it goes onto the shelf, and now what do we do?
Right.
So for every institution, I want to say the target is different, but there should always be a mix of short wins. So short-term wins, low-hanging fruit, things that are easy to accomplish, that don't cost a lot of money, no new technology required. And along with that, some long-term project areas. So that target the areas that your institution deems important. In some cases, it might be the student population. So if you're first-gen college students or veterans, wherever the target is. In other cases, it might be the disciplines in which your institution is investing or recruiting or touting more than others. And working with administrative offices, such as the Office of Environment or Student Success. That's a way to apply traditional skills in a new way, or at least to target these groups that have been ignored in the past. And I don't say we ignored them, but we treated all students as the same, and each one wants to be personalized. So we've got a lot of examples where just changing a few words in the announcement can make a big difference. So my initial recommendation is that every library worker begin to use their personal research and even their social media skills for the profession and the institution. Start wherever you are on that continuum with content at one end and technology at the other. And wherever you are, just move a little bit more towards the center. Mm-hmm. So gain more skills, read a lot in another area, watch, observe innovations that are happening in the library adjacent worlds. And even if you can't gain mastery, at least get an understanding of the lingo of the other.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned, a good place to start too is like sort of making sure you're aligning what you're doing with the sort of campus strategy administration, the way the libraries have to sort of prove their value, so to speak, up back up to the, institution's academic strategy.
And you may just need to rephrase
Hmm.
what you already have
Right.
done,
Yep.
but you might as well use their verbiage.
Absolutely. So, what are some of the more common issues you address in your work in helping libraries reorganize roles and policies to better integrate themselves into scholarly communication workflows?
This one is really an easy one. It means truly just analyze the time it takes to perform a task. That means looking at each activity to determine whether it supports one of the 5 or 6 or 8 or however many goals you have in your library. If you can't figure out the goal that activity supports, then stop doing it. And you can gain time back to use in support of other objectives. If you still need to do that task, you might want to think about how you can do it for less time, less money. That means looking at who's doing the work. It means making the case for change that everyone understands. It may mean getting new technology in and learning it,
Hmm.
but ultimately it's going to help you.
Right. So there's been an awful lot of talk around, impact factor, impact measurement, and research assessment, and it sounds like those are shifting as well as scholarly communications evolve. Which traditional notions and perspectives are beginning to give way, in your opinion, to new methods and priorities?
Well, there are so many impact factors that are tracked. Plus, now there are multiple ways to assess social media as
Yeah.
well.
Right.
So it's just a mess. But I think if you look at your institution and what's important to your institution and keep adding new ways to track and report that data, it's going to be helpful. It used to be that we looked at individual citations for a scholar's publication, how many times it was cited and where. And
Yeah.
now we aggregate information for our departments, our institutions, and we compare researchers and institutions from around the world. The more interesting story is seen in how the research is changing society. I began thinking about the reports that underpinned regulations and legislation with the introduction of Fiscal Note, I want to say in the 20 teens.
Hmm.
And now it's available as paid subscriptions via Dimensions or Scopus, I believe. What's valued by the institution and funding agencies has also changed. So, public private partnerships, those cross institutional, cross border, global research efforts are deemed more highly than an individual or a single institution's effort.
Hmm. That's, so I'm curious, are the scholars and researchers aware of these emerging methods or, these opportunities, or is that kind
I
of,
think they're aware of it. I
yeah,
think that they are aware of it, but it's easier to ignore it. And um, I think it's the same kind of thing as the open access
yes,
material
yeah.
where we know it's out there, but it's not going to affect me because I'm going to stick with the things I know.
Hmm. Right. And then where does this, like, if a librarian is sort of working with a researcher on this aspect of it, like, is this happening at the beginning of the project or at the end when it's wrapping up, or?
I think a lot of it happens alongside.
Oh, okay.
So it's not a single publication or a single research effort.
Hmm.
It's how you talk about these things. Maybe if you're not comfortable leading or facilitating a discussion on the topic, find somebody who is
Right.
and schedule a meetup in your library so that people can come in. Probably it's Zoom now, but uh, hopefully, eventually, somebody will come to me in person. And I think that it's the way you want to learn. So you're learning at the same time they are. You're not an expert at everything.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be. I love now, I see these advertisements for people with AI experience. Well,
Mm-hmm.
how many people have AI experience
Right.
who are going for these jobs all over? So I think we're all on a learning curve.
Yep, exactly. You just heard from Barbie Kaiser. Barbie is president of Barbie E. Kaiser Inc. and an information resources management consultant. Join us next week as we turn our gaze to the horizon and discuss how AI tools will impact Skullcom and how open access will continue to evolve. This 4-part series is brought to you with support from Gale. As always, underwriting opportunities for the Authority File podcast are directed by Choice's advertising manager, Pam Marino, and all of our episodes are produced and edited by Choice's digital media producer, Sabrina Kofer, with support from digital media assistant, Ashley Roy. That's all for this week. Thanks for joining us.